Good morning, class. Today we are going to uh, be talking about the approaches to the study of public administration under the course title uh, The Theory and Practice of Public Administration, that's post 315. Basically, when we are talking about the approaches to the study of public administrations, we have three major approaches to the study of public administration, and that is scientific approach, institutional approach, and comparative approach. Scientific approach, institutional approach, and comparative approach. So let's move on to look at uh, the understanding of scientific approach. When we are talking about scientific approach, we're actually talking about an attempt being used by public administrators to study public administration using scientific method. We have different scientific methods that have been applied to the study of public administrations. And these are basically grouped into three. We have behavioral approach, we have human relation approach, and we have systems approach. Don't forget that we are talking about the approaches to the study of public administrations. And basically, we have three. We have scientific, institutional, and we have comparative approach. And under the scientific, we are saying there are basic methods that have been applied universally under scientific method to study public administrations. And it was further breaked into other sub-approach, which I mentioned earlier as behavioral approach, human relation approach, and systems approach. Now let us look at behavioral approach. Behavioral approach behavioral approach in public administration simply means the attempt to focus on the analysis of individual attitudes and behavior at the workplace. Behavioral approach simply focus on the understanding of the attitudes and behaviors of individual workers within the public administrations or within an organization. So in this regard, when we are talking about the understanding of the attitudes and behavioral, you might be behaviors of individual within an organization. You might want to look at their disposition toward works, their weaknesses, their strength, and how those things, their attitude toward works, their strength and weaknesses within that organization has impacted on the organizational goals, and vice versa, how has organization been able to influence the individual within the organization systems. So basically, you are looking at this approach from the sense of the understanding of the behavior, the attitude of individual within the organizations, and how are their disposition toward works, the work attitude toward works, their weaknesses. It could be physical, it could be psychological, or otherwise, and their strength as well, in terms of the strength, the physical ability, the intellectual ability, the psychological ability, how those things put together has impacted on the organization in terms of achieving its goal, and vice versa, how has the organization been able, through its policy implementation, the organizational approach toward workers' need and welfare, how has the organization been able to influence the individual within that settings? This approach also focuses on the systematic gathering and analyzing of data. We are still talking about the behavioral approach. Don't forget, we look at behavioral approach first from the attitudes and behaviors of individual within the organizational settings and their dispositions, their attitude toward works, their strength, their weaknesses in terms of intellect, physical ability, and how those things have been able to impact on the organization in achieving its goal, and vice versa, how has organization been able to influence the individual workforce in that settings. And secondly, we want to look at the focus of behavioral approach, and we say behavioral approach also focus on systematic gathering and analyzing of data using different scientific methods like questionnaires, interview, group focus discussions, and other surface methods to either gather data or to analyze them. We now want to talk about the human relation approach. Human relation approach. The one thing you must be cognizant of is that human relation approach emerge as a result of the weaknesses observed within the operationalism of behavioral approach. The critic observes some weaknesses which they think is too rigid, in the sense that focusing on individual attitude towards work, their strengths, their weaknesses, or how organization is able to respond to all that is not enough as an approach to the study of public administrations. So in this light, human relation approach basically focus on the situation in which individuals' aspirations are not in conformity with the organizational goal. It is assumed that ordinarily human beings are inherently selfish. They have their own interest, instinct, or inbuilt desire for personal aggrandizement, which may not be in conformity with the organizational goals. So, in the long run, this approach is talking about how the organization is going to harmonize all these individual differences and aspirations to ensure that all those differences are harmonized and ensure they conform with the organizational goal. And how are they going to do this? They emphasize training, reorientations. That's why in organizations, when a new staff or group of staff are being brought in, they go through orientation program, a form of socialization to expose them to what the organization requests from them and their own expectation from the organization as well. So they won't be working across, or they won't be working against the organizational agenda. So the major focus of the human relation approach is based on the assumption that human aspirations and agenda, individual aspiration and agenda, may not always be in conformity with the organizational goal. So therefore, there is need for the organization to harmonize all these individual differences and their aspirations to ensure that they conform to the achievement of the organizational goals. And they are going to do that basically through orientation and training, because the individual within the organization need to be trained, especially when they are new. Even when they are been in the system for some time, they still need to continue to be. They need to continue they need to continue to expose them to training and retraining. So day in, day out, they can learn new things that will help them to act or to behave in conformity with the agenda of the organizations in question. So we want to talk about the method being adopted by human relations approach. The first method is that the manager of the organizations must ensure that it finds a way to motivate the individuals within that settings. Manager must motivate individual within the organizational system. This means that for him to ensure that individual aspiration are in conformity with the organizational goal, the manager of such organization must also ensure that they motivate the individual that are working in that settings, and they can do this either by increment in wages, ensure that the worker get promoted as at when due, or even go to the extent of catering or providing a befitting shelter. It could be in form of house allowance or even building a staff quarters. Secondly, the manager of the organizations must be compassionate toward the need of the individual working within that settings. They must be compassionate. They must show concern about the workers' well-being. They must ask questions when they notice that the workers are psychologically down. They must find a way to show concerns that they are also worried about the welfare of the worker that is being affected, either psychologically or in other way around. Then the manager within organizational settings must encourage a sense of belonging. The manager must be willing to carry every individual within that settings along in order to create a sense of belonging. There mustn't be it is we against them. Even when some category of worker are termed seniors or management staff, there must be a way through which they can interact, where they can listen to the yearning of the junior cadres. So the management team can find a way of meeting their needs so that they can encourage their participations or active participation, or ways in which they can drive the organizational goal together. There must be effective coordinations and control. Under human relations approach, there must be effective coordinations and control in order not to create disunity or insubordinations. Then we now want to talk about the last subset of approach within scientific approach to the study of public administration. That is system approach. System approach. Under the system approach, it is believed that the organization itself is a system that comprises of different units. That's why in every organization there are departments, sections, or units that are made up of that organization. Department might be headed by a particular person carrying out a specific function together with other staff under his supervision. So In this particular settings, all the units must be working in harmonious relationship. They must be working together to ensure the survivability of the entire organization, to achieve the organizational goal. Every unit, every department within the organization must work together. And their relationships must be harmonious, must be orderly. So that is the essence of system approach within the scientific approach to the study of public administrations. We now want to look at the second approach to the study of public administrations, which is institutional approach. Institutional approach. This approach basically emphasizes on the institutional structure, their functions, the rules and regulations of the executive, legislature, and the department of the government. What this approach actually emphasizes is the institution itself, the structure within that institution. They see it as key. The function of the institution is also paramount, and the rules and regulations, they consider it as a driving force. So they believe that without rule and regulations, without the structures, and without the functioning of institutions, organization cannot survive. That is why they emphasize on the apolitical natures of apolitical nature and technicality of public administration for any organization to survive. So, in essence, what institutional approach talk about is basically the structure, the rules and regulations, and they also emphasize the apolitical nature and the technicality aspect of public administration. That is, without separating politics from administrations, without giving the bureaucrat, the technocrat, the chance to operate, it will be difficult for organization, for public to survive. So they focus majorly on the rule that governs the interactions of worker within the public administration settings and the structures. That's why they emphasize more on hierarchy, the communication chain in bureaucracy. That once those things are there and strictly adhered to, the survivability of organization can be guaranteed. The achievability of organizational goal can also be reached. Then we now want to talk about the comparative approach to the study of public administration. The word itself has actually given us a clear view of what this approach is focused on. It is simply the comparison of organizational system in different backgrounds and countries. It is an attempt to compare, or an effort to compare organizational system in different socio-cultural background and country to see how one can impact positively on the other, or to also observe why one tend to be progressing and the other seem to be retrogressing. The failure of order can be there could be lesson to be learned from the success of another that could help to cater for the failure of another organizational system. It is also important to note that in comparing organizational system, there must be a due consideration for culture and religion. That is why in comparative study, it is always easy and safe to compare systems that have similarities. The similarity might not be 100% perfect, with little dissimilarity, in the sense that when you are comparing, for instance, you want to compare a federal system of government with a unity system of government. First thing you have in mind that these two systems are separated, they are different from each other, and in comparing them, you might get stuck or run into some problem. So it's always easy and more safer when you compare systems that have a lot of similarities. There could be little differences to system that doesn't have anything in common. So when you are trying to compare, there are certain factors or issues that are needed to be given due consideration. And two of them are culture and religion, because these two key issues or factors always have a way, either directly or indirectly, in which they can impact or they can influence public administration in any social in any clime, in any country. And for instance, you will see that in some Islamic country, there could be some liberty given to women workers in terms of flexibility of time to work than in other countries where both female and male workers were given equal time to work and equal schedule of duty to be carried out. I think I would like to stop here till our next class. If there's any questions or observation or comments, please do not hesitate to send your comments, observations, or questions before the next class. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.